tongue.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the Middle of the Pack Racing League Cruising USA GR86 Championship for 2023. And today, of course, marks round 10 of 12, and we are here in the state of Alabama in the United States of America for the one and only Barber Motorsports Park. Located, of course, near Birmingham, this circuit is one that is much loved by drivers and spectators alike, as whilst it may not have any major permanent spectator stands, you'll see crowds draw to the fields and indeed to the hills around the circuit. And with 16 corners and 40 metre wide surface area road, it is a circuit like no other when it comes to offering up overtaking opportunities. Fast line with multiple elevation changes, a net elevation change of 24 metres over lap. That means that this is just as much a test of the ability of the drivers to stay close to one another as it is their confidence to be able to take speed from corner to corner and master the art of taking their car up to the optimum RPM range in order to attack the next straight. Get it right and our drivers may find themselves clear of the rest of the pack. Get it wrong, however, they may find themselves in a titillating battle for the fans, and the drivers behind will be looking to try and cut their way through and gain plenty of points. But as we get ready to go racing today, of course, this is a post-round broadcast for your viewing pleasure. Let's take you through our schedule for tonight. Times in British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinated Time +1, that's UTC +1, and our schedule is as follows. In just under 13 minutes time, we'll be heading into our qualifying session. 15 minutes in duration, we'll see all our drivers make their way out of the circuit in two groups, and they'll be looking to set their best possible qualifying times, of course, to set themselves up for success in our one and only sprint race today. Indeed, our sprint race immediately follows, and that'll be at 8:30 this evening, and that will be 30 minutes in duration, and there are no pit stops on the cards. It'll be fast, flat out, all the way from start to finish, and who'll be able to come away taking the checker flag in their respective class at the end. We'll find out all that and more in due course. In the commentary booth, you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain and Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and you can tune in tonight to live via two media channels for your viewing pleasure. First, if you go to youtube.com and search for Paul Walsh or TX1TX, you can tune in there. Alternatively, if you go to twitch.tv/TX141, you can tune in live on Twitch. Now, we should clarify, of course, that this being a post-round broadcast, what that means in essence is that the racing is not occurring live currently. The racing actually occurred as of earlier this week, back on Wednesday the 29th of March, but of course today is Saturday the 1st of April, and be not fooled, we are bringing you all the racing as if it were live, and of course we do ask those drivers who may be spectating right now and opting to tune in to avoid giving away any key spoilers, whether it be in the final practice session, the qualifying session, or indeed the race itself. I, host and commentator, have done everything I can to avoid any potential spoilers. Indeed, we want the very best of the guys and girls tuning at home, and no spoilers please. But as we get ready to go racing once again, well, let's give you a reminder of the calendar so far and what still lies in wait. And we can see here that we are now almost to the very end. We're right in the thick of the Southern State Cup. Indeed, last time out in round number 9, we kicked off the Southern State Cup at Road Atlanta in the state of Georgia, and there at Braselton it was a thriller. The roller coaster ride absolutely delivering on the 22nd of March. We got to see plenty of battles up and down the field, and indeed perhaps the mighty fell at the very front of the field with, of course, Jason Landry. The name of the pro class and indeed the overall field is always known for taking the pole qualifying lap and also victory in the races, falling foul slightly to James D. Carr, who was able to take victory there at Road Atlanta. Of course, could this be a one-off or could it be a buck in the trend, with Jason Landry having such an advantage in the pro class as we'll be seeing very shortly? We'll have to wait and find out. But indeed, the rivalries were intense, and Road Atlanta has set herself up for the final 3 rounds, and what 3 rounds we've got. Because after today, with round number 10 at Barber Motorsports Park, then round number 11, the penultimate round, we'll be heading to the Sebring International Raceway in the state of Florida for our final sprint of the championship, and that will be on the 5th of April, and then we bring it all to a close with the final round of the Southern State Cup, and of course the overall championship, and our final feature race round, and that will be also in the state of Florida at the Daytona Road Course, and that will be on the 12th of April, and what a round that's going to be, where the slipstream will be ever most critical on the oval banking, but also the art of getting it right on the brakes and carrying speed out of hairpins in the infield is also going to have a major factor in how things play out in the long course. Of course, preceding all of this, we started off the Big State Cup, which was a celebration of the largest states in the United States of America, with round 1 taking place at Watkins Glen in the state of New York, round 2 taking place at Laguna Seca in the state of California, and we stayed in California for Long Beach in round number 3, and we wrapped up the Big State Cup in round 4 at the Circuit of the Americas in Texas, and in our second cup of the season, the Midwest Cup, was a celebration of motorsporting venues in the Midwest states, and we started off with round number 5 5 in the state of Indiana at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And then round number 6, it was Mid-Ohio in, of course, the state of Ohio. And then round number 7, it was Belle Isle in the city of Detroit, located in the state of Michigan. And we wrapped up the Midwest Cup with round number 8 of Road America in the state of Wisconsin. And with the Southern State Cup being a celebration of motorsporting venues in the Southern States, of course, this series has been a celebration of motorsport in general across the United States of America. And what better car to run this series than the Toyota GR86 Cup car, as tuned by Toyota's Gazoo Racing North America division, and the car making its debut in the real world and the virtual motorsporting world as of 2023. But as we look to our championship standings now, we can see Jason Landry in the Pro class overall firstly leading the way by a margin that has improved to 52 points over Aaron Lahr. Landry may not have won last time out, but he is still your championship leader and growing with an advantage, and he only needs a couple more strong results now in order to be able to put this championship at bay and give himself the ultimate prize, which is the crown. Behind him with Aaron Lahr there, only 14 points clear of Francois Schenck. It could not be closer to be the runner-up in that hunt versus Jason Landry, with Lahr, Schenck and James D. Carr separated by a margin and what is tantamount to a grand total of 26 points. Behind them, Jordan Butler in 5th place at this time, only 6 clear of Mika Hendricks, 254 to 248, with Tanner Dibble a further point off. And then we have James Logsdon, Carl Ranieri and Jerome Bagiles completing the top 10, with John Lauzon sitting a further 19 points behind Best of Rest and Matej Georgiou completing the standings. We then come on to the Pro-Am class meanwhile, and overall we can see Logan McKenzie down 318 points, continuing to hold his advantage over Alberto Alvarez to 26 points, and indeed it was absolutely tense between the two of them at Road Atlanta, with both drivers at certain points in the race leading the way in their respective class, and these two really have been the titans of the class, and that's why they're so far clear of the rest of the field. But in the end, it was Logan McKenzie who held on to once again find a way to frustrate his rival of Alvarez, and it could not come at a more critical time. Of course, both drivers got major drop scores still to deal with, but Alvarez really finds himself now in the pressure seat, with needing to put a win in tonight in order to be able to turn the results around before it's too late. Meanwhile, in P3, Edwin Onofre has jumped up into the 3rd place spot, 5 points clear of Samuel Cram, with Onofre's great performance at Road Atlanta, keeping him clear of a good chunk of the field and moving him to this rather coveted position. And then Samuel Cram dropping a P4, but still having a reasonable advantage, 21 points over Donald Sepek, who completes the run to the end of the top 5. 5 points over the top 5, Kirk Lane in P6, who is 2 clear of Jonathan Ballard, with a sizable gap to Ilya Speaker in P8, and then Milan Harris and John Kroom complete the top 10. Best of the rest there, Jay DeVries ahead of Carlos Hathcock, they complete your standings, and Jermaine Warren, John Wilding and Zach Saunders yet to compete in the championship. We then come on to the AM class, and we can see here in the AM class it is Samuel Bernardi who leads the way by a margin that has just grown a little bit to 9 points. But the key factor is this has all come about as a result of Fernando Takahashi's absence as of last week. Last week, it was Fernando Takahashi who went into the round at Road Atlanta leading the championship, but Bernardi is back on form, and well, we've got the two giants of the AM class who are expected to go toe-to-toe tonight, and I can tell you they are both in attendance here at the Barber Motorsports Park, and which one of them is going to come away with the win and set themselves up for the final 2 rounds. Dan Vitchuk, meanwhile, let's not count out Vitchuk on 189 points, but only 1 clear of Mark Senegal, with Ian Henry a further 8 points off in P5. But you can see the theme here is the top 5 are very close, with only what is there the best part of 41 points separating P1 to P5. And if you continue the trend down, you can see Nick Bader in P6 on 160 points. He may be 20 points off of the top 5, but he's got to keep himself going because he's only 5 points clear of Gus Blondell, who is only ahead of Jack Davis based on result countback, and Glenn Bratton and Billman DaCosta not too far off of the point, and therefore this top 10 at the moment being separated by a grand margin which is under 90 points, and therefore it could swing either way in terms of who's in that top 5 by the very end. Avon Dorsey as well, only outside of the top 10 by 5 points, and ahead of Roger Ganesh based on result countback to be the best of the rest. And then it's Ines Usul, PG Christensen, Dan Ocaranza, Dylan Valenga, Spencer Cocaine, Dave Hernandez, Albert Brand and Jordan Hooks who complete the AM class standings. But as we come onto the teams championship, we can see Sunday GT Turtles continue to lead. Their margin has grown to a degree, now up to the best part of 43 points. In fact, I should do the maths there, and it's actually 53 points over Team Bear Pope, with Team Bear Pope returning to P2 with the results last time out enabling him to jump ahead of Beaver Buzz Energy, but it's only 5 points between the two teams, and the fight does seem to be on to be in that runner-up spot at the moment, rather than taking the fight to Sunday GT Turtles, with DNA Motorsports in P4 in a bit of a no man's land, not close enough to the top 3, but just far enough away from the middle of the pack Jedi in P5. MOP Jedi have got a good advantage over Rockefeller Racing White, who are in P6, and they are ahead of Bear Pope 0 by by only 13 points. We could see an exchange between them tonight. And then Pan Am Racing, MOP Civ, and Rockefeller Racing Pink complete the top 10. And then Best of the Rest Hassel's Motorsports with new team at Reverse Grid Racing emerging into P12 there on 53 points. We then come to the Cup standings, of course, after one round of the Southern State Cup. And we can see here in the Pro class, James Ducar leads the way. That confirmation of his victory last time out. 3 points clear of Jason Landry, with Francois Schink in P3 on 40 points. And he'll need to do well to keep Jordan Butler at bay, with Tanner Dibble, Carl Ranieri, Jerome Bajulas, and Aaron Lahr completing the standings. James Logsdon, John Lauzon, Matej Georgiou, and Mika Hendricks yet to compete in a round of the Cup. In the Pro class, it is Logan McKenzie who leads by 6 points over Alberto Alvarez, and McKenzie really having to work hard in order to keep Alvarez at bay. But again, it could have gone either way last week, and we're expecting much the same today. Edwin Offred only a further 4 points off there in P3, one to watch out for. The dark horse in this battle to be in the top three, with Milan Harris in P4, 2 points further afield. And then Samuel Cran, John Kroom, Donald Sepek, Jay DeVries, and Jonathan Ballard to complete the standings, with Carlos Hathcott, Ilya Speaker, Jermaine Warren, John Wilding, Kirk Lane, and Zach Saunders yet to compete in this cup. We then come on to the AM class, and you can see in their cup it's Samuel Bernardi who leads by 5 points over Avon Dorsey. And keep your eyes on Avon Dorsey, a driver who should not be underestimated for their ability to really keep Samuel Bernardi and Fernando Takahashi honest over the last few rounds. And Dan Victor there as well, another underdog, you could argue, and looking to try and end his championship campaign on a high on 28 points there in the cup currently. 2 points clear of Auguste Blondel, with Dylan Valinga a further point off. And you can see that trend of close points continues all the way down to P10, where Valinga is followed up by Ian Henneberry, Billman DaCosta, Nick Bader, Glenn Bratton, and Jordan Hooks. And then drivers who've yet to compete in the Cup: Albert Brand, Christopher Tarango, Dan Ocaranza, Dave Hernandez, Ines Usul, Fernando Takahashi, Jack Davis, Mark Senegal, and Matt Underkoffler. But as we then come on to our circuit for today, well, it is the Barber Motorsports Park full course, located near the town of Birmingham in Jefferson County of the state of Alabama in the US of A. This circuit, as you can see from the circuit map provided to us by the simulator, of course, of iRacing.com. Thank you to them for their wonderful simulator and circuit maps to go with it. And this circuit is fast line. Looks a little bit odd on paper, two-dimensional as well. Doesn't quite give us the exhibition of the 24-metre elevation change over the lap. But be certain here, a good number of these corners, they are heavily cambered, either off camber or on camber. And on top of that, with the depressions and a number of blind apexes, our drivers will definitely have their confidence taken to the test, as well as their ability to overtake with a 14-metre wide road surface. For as they make their way across the start-finish line into the downhill run for turn one, they'll come onto the brakes before sliding the car down the hill and heading up towards the double right-hand apex of turns 2 and 3. They'll make their way through the long right-hander before charging through the kink of 4 and up to turn number 5. In the run to turn 5, there could be overtaking opportunities, but if drivers can't find it there, they may just be able to do an overtake on the exit of 5, heading up towards turns 7 and 8 via 6. As they break their way into turns 7, 8 and 9, they'll find they're going into a blind apex to set up turn number 9 effectively, but they have to break across the apex curves of turn 7 and 8 in order to do so. And as they power their way out of turn 9 and pick up the speed, it's through the fast flying cut to turns 10 and 11 before coming down to turn 12, and then we have 3 more corners to essentially wrap up the lap, albeit turn 13 not being numbered there on the exit of 12. But you imagine the 12-13 complex to coming together, and it's the long right-hander of 14 and 15. We see the apex gradually tighten up at turn 15, and it's the small left-hander at turn 16 to complete the lap and do it all again. Now coming on to our rules for today, well, let's just give you a quick reminder of the rules, of course. In terms of setups, I'm trying to run a fixed setup as provided by the Middle of the Pack Racing League. Car fuel loads have been restricted to 35 litres, which means our drivers can make it to the end of the race unscathed on fuel capacity for our sprints. Qualifying wise, an open qualifying format shall be used, lasting 15 minutes and split into 2 equal halves. The AM class will take to the field for the first half of the qualifying session, so the first 7.5 minutes, and then the Prime and Pro classes shall jointly take to the circuit for the second half. In the sprint race, the race shall start via grid start, as is the tradition of the series, which each driver having one fast repair available. And the driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 18 or more instant points. And should there be a major incident at the start of the race, so on the opening lap, a safety car may be deployed at the discretion of the director of the race course. And of course, that's Leah Porter, who is in the race direction booth. Otherwise, the safety car shall not be deployed during the race, and we won't be expected to after that opening lap. But that's enough rules, regulation, everything in between. I know what you're all here for, ladies and gentlemen. You're here for the racing, and indeed, as we look to our pictures at the moment, we see James Carr making his way on around here, and well, the privateer heading up towards what will be the run to turns at 12 and 13, and the man, of course, who was able to find a way to beat Jason Landry last week, and well, can he do it again here today? Well, the practice times would say perhaps it's not possible, or at least it's not looking feasible at the moment, given Landry is the fastest man out there, and you can imagine Landry will definitely be looking to improve even further after losing out by small margins. But of course, also Carl Ranieri, a name in the Pepto-Bismol machine, as he parks up then goes back to the pit, and he's looking very fast once again. As we look to Alberto Alvarez as the Pan Am Racing driver who needs to find a way to knock Logan McKenzie down a couple of places before it's too late. Indeed, this could be the make or break round. But speaking of make or break, it's time for us to break away into qualifying, ladies and gentlemen. We do need to cut away for a brief moment, but we'll be back within a minute in order to kick off qualifying. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss it. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and qualifying is underway with 15 minutes, 7.5 for each of the class sets out on circuit, and who is going to be able to find their way to pole position in their respective class. Well, this circuit is definitely going to be one of those which will put all of our drivers to the task for the simple reason it's such a fast-flying circuit around here at Barber Motorsports Park, and as we do see Dan Victor pulling away off of his pit box in the 213 car. A rather nice livery on the car, I must say. They do love the blend of the grey and the yellow, and it does make the car stand out. Well, what does it mean to have a good qualifying lap here at the Barber Motorsports Park? What do you need to do in order to be able to deliver it? Well, before we come on to that, we of course do take a brief moment to say hello to you guys and girls in the YouTube and Twitch chats, and do not be shy, feel free to say hi regardless of which one you're in. You can see both of them. I hope you're having a great weekend so far, and we say hello firstly to Miss Kitty Louise 90 in the Twitch chat, who says good evening Paul, hope you're well. I'm doing very well, thank you, Miss Kitty Louise. How about yourself? I hope you're having a great day, and we do apologise, ladies and gentlemen, for this broadcast being a few hours later than the typical broadcast that we bring to you on the Saturday afternoon, and the simple reason for that is I've spent a good portion of the afternoon in the United Kingdom with some friends who I haven't seen in a while, so I do apologise for that, but we're all firing on all cylinders right now in this qualifying session, and we do say hello there to Mark Senegal in the YouTube chat, who says hello everyone, and it's great to have you with us, Mark, as we do see him make his way on around right now in the Sunday GT Turtles 227 machine, and well, he may be a turtle in terms of the team he races for, but I can tell you one thing, when he finds it right, he can sprint like a hare, but he's not happy with that one as the front bumper comes off the car and going a little bit wrong there, but he resets the pit lane, look to go again, but meanwhile we do look to Dylan Bellinger, who makes their way on down towards turns 14 and 15, the long right hander here as he comes on up the hill and making his way all the way around. It seems to never end, the right hander, and he finally finds the end of the course, but as he makes way into turn 16 we jump on board with Dylan Bellinger for a flying lap of the Barber Motorsports Park full course. Making his way down to turn 1, dashboard in the bottom right corner of your screen if you want to follow the speed and gear shifts, and as he makes his way in towards the opening corner, getting ready to brake at the one board there, coming down the speed and down to third gear, brings the car over to the left hand side immediately and then lets it creep towards the apex of turn 2, balance the throttle here, it's all about measuring the speed, holding in third gear and then get back on the power as he clears the apex of turn 3, through the right hander of 4, over a crest there, blind on the corner, and as he makes his way down towards turn number 5, where he's opened up the first quarter of the lap, now onto the brakes once again, braking away is effectively the one board or the 50-yard board, turn 5, nice early apex, and then immediately stand back on the throttle, build back up through the gearbox, he heads over to the left hand side of the road, through the kink of 6, and now down towards 7, 8 and 9, and will turn 7 looks a long way away, it's a right hander that's coming up, there's the boards on the left hand side, and we're currently in 4th gear, and now going from 100 miles an hour onto the brakes down to 3rd gear, straight line over the apex of turn 8, and now onto the brakes hard for turn number 9, but you have to brake before you see the apex go for turn 9, down to 2nd gear and powering out, nicely done there from Bellinger as he makes his way now up towards turns at 10 and 11, through the left into right here, committing as much as possible to flat out or as close as possible to it as he heads up towards turn number 12, and now bringing the car over to the right hand side, half the lap done, still a third of it to go as he breaks down the gearbox here, but he doesn't drop any gears at the moment, staying in 4th, in fact stays in 4th all the way through turns 12 and 13, and now into turn 14, and this is where he'll start to lift off the throttle, then bring it back in and bring the car to the left hand side before coming onto the brakes down to 3rd gear, getting on the power once again, but brings the car over to the right to set up turn 16 and immediately turns in and rides over the apex curve, kicks. All four wheels are in track limits. Nice lap there from Dylan Valinga, and that is a lap of the Motorsports Park as he makes his way down towards turn 1, and it is a 1:39.737. Well, I think he'll feel as though there's a bit more time out there for himself. I think a few moments where he could have exploited a bit more of the road potentially, but meanwhile Samuel Bernardi goes the fastest of everybody so far in the AM class. Meanwhile Fernando Takahashi not too far behind, albeit it looks as though it is quite a gap, 8 tenths currently, but my gut feeling says that Takahashi will be looking at those timers right now and thinking he can do a lot more with the time available to him. And as he heads out and around through turns 3 and into 4 here, where he's given a little bit of benefit to one of the Team Barefoot machines. I think that's the Barefoot Zero car in Billman DaCosta. In fact, it's not. It is in fact the other car in Henneberry, as we look to Billman DaCosta making his way out to turn 4 now. And of course, with this AM class being so close on pace at the very front of the field and also in the midfield, it is anybody's game in terms of where they're going to be lined up on that overall grid come the end. And that does mean for every driver, every thousandth counts, because of the fact we have seen the AMs really slice and splice their way in amongst the primes on the grid. And it does lead to situations where an AM may be able to out-qualify their peer by a single place in the AM class, but they end up out-qualifying their peers by a couple of places when you put all the classes together. And Bernardi and Fernando Takahashi will be looking at that in particular, and Bernardi will be thinking, right, if he can keep this gap of 7 to 8 tenths between himself and the rest of the field, could he put a couple of primes between himself and at least Takahashi to give himself the breathing room when he goes into the first few laps of the race, and therefore he can try to break away? Well, of course, that's what he'll be thinking about in terms of his strategy. Will it play out like that in practice? Time will be the one who figures that as he makes his way down towards turn 1, coming across the line there. Mark Senegal going even faster than Bernardi, and that is a 1:38.754 for Senegal. And well, the Sunday GT Turtles driver, as we said before, he did have the instant coming out of turn at number 13. We went to the inside wall due to putting a rear left tyre on the grass. He's maybe part of Sunday GT Turtles, but when he needs to, he can charge and sprint like the hare as he makes his way down towards turn number 5. And well, could he be the man who is really going to spoil the plans of Bernardi and Takahashi today and potentially put them both out of the running for that victory in class? Well, as he heads out of turn at number 5 and up towards 7, 8 and 9 he goes in the draft there of Bernardi, and I think Bernardi will be hoping that if he gives Senegal the toe on this lap, then they'll flip fortunes and do the opposite for one another on the next lap. But given there's only 1.5 minutes to go, they haven't got long left, and with the lap time around here being in the region of just over 1.5 minutes, they will get this lap plus one more. They are allowed to finish the lap when the timer strikes 7.5 minutes, and that's when the pros and the primes will come out behind them, albeit the pros and primes do get held in position for a brief moment if AM drives have gone onto a new lap right at the end of the session in order to provide safety space for the AM drivers. But it is now becoming really do or die in terms of putting those laps in, and Senegal here continuing to follow Bernardi around. I think also he might be studying his rival, perhaps doing a little bit of note-taking on the proverbial notepad, albeit he doesn't have one in the cockpit, but you can imagine he'll be making a mental note where Bernardi might be a little bit faster and where he might be a little bit slower by comparison or looking exposed. But Bernardi releases him there through turn 14 into 15, with Senegal coming through the final corner, but he's not improving by the looks of things. What about Bernardi? Meanwhile, he's improved in subsector 3. They head across the timeline, and as they set the time board alight, Senegal does not improve, neither does Bernardi. Bernardi will now give it everything with 30 seconds remaining. He'll have one more lap available to him. Meanwhile, we look to Glenn Bratton as he heads up towards the timeline, and Bratton moves up to P3 with a 39.428, but he's immediately moved down to P4. Dan Vitchuk improves further to a 39.427, only 1,000 between the two of them, and Ian Henneberry cuts his way into P3 there, albeit with some connectivity issues. Hopefully that's not going to be too serious. We do have to look away there with his unstable connection, but Ian Henneberry 5 attempts off of the pole lap, but most importantly he's been able to jump Bratton and also Vitchuk very comfortably there with a whole 10.5 between them as they make their way down towards turn at number 5. Once again into the depression they go, and in the pit lane is Jack Davis plus Billman DaCosta. They've completed their qualifying sessions. We've also got Dylan Valinga in, so they'll be P8, P9 and P7 respectively in the order we've called them out. And meanwhile we continue to see the remainder of this AM qualifying session that comes to its conclusion, and I think Fernando Takahashi on an in-lap, I don't think he was able to get across the line in time to be able to go on to another lap, and he does have the pros and the primes immediately behind him. But meanwhile, it's not quite over in the AM qualifying session, because of course we've got Bernardi and Senegal together. Mark Senegal's gone purple, best of everybody in the AM class in sector 1, and in sector 3 he's improved on his personal best. Meanwhile, Samuel Bernardi has only improved in sector 2. It's a personal best, not an overall best, and as they make their way through turns 14 and 15, 17. I think this could be going the way of the Sunday GT Turtles driver, but as we see here, Bernardi coming on through. Will Senegal crosses the timeline first? What's it going to be here? It's currently 15 thousandths between the two of them. I think he's going to raise the bar. No, it's Bernardi, in fact, who raises the bar of 38.520. Will Bernardi there absolutely setting the time in the light in the final sector, and with that, we didn't set any overall best, but the whole lap was the best of the bunch, and he's got it done, or has he? Dan Vitchett moves to P3. Glenn Bratton's crossed the line, has not improved. Fernando Takahashi, the last stand, but he comes into the pit lane, and therefore we now do get the release to move on to the Pro-Am and Pro qualifying session. And will the first driver coming on around in that will be none other than Carl Ranieri, as we do see the Pepto-Bismol privateer machine. Of course, the number 84 car heading across the timeline. Ranieri has been one of those ones to watch out for, a bit of a dark horse in the Pro class. Certain rounds, he hasn't quite necessarily been there on the pace, but in other rounds, he's really been the driver who's there in the background waiting to pounce for a podium place or the win. And of course, mixing up his virtual motorsporting exploits with his real world motorsporting exploits. And well, it's an absolute pleasure to see him taking to the iRacing circuit today as he makes his way down towards turn number 5. As he comes on down here, behind him he does have some company, and I believe, unless I'm mistaken, that is Mika Hendricks tucking in behind. And well, we can see here the Beaver Buzz Energy driver, another one to watch out for in the 73 car. And well, Hendricks has not quite had the run of results perhaps we expected in the last couple of rounds, but you can imagine they'll be looking to come on strong today as they make their way down towards 7, 8 and 9. Flying on through here, of course, for Hendricks, it's about just getting a good time on the board currently, and if he's able to do that, I think he'll feel as though the sky is the limit when we go into race conditions. We're coming a bit too hot down onto the apex curve of turn number 9. You notice there when he mounted it with the two right hand side tyres, the car just gradually being scooped away with a bit of understeer over to the left hand side, and that's the thing you have to be careful about here, because this circuit is so focused on flow. The more you attack this circuit, the more you start to get a little bit carried away with it. You want to carry speed, but excessive speed is very hard to bleed once the momentum starts building. And in these GR86 Cup cars, well, they haven't got too much engine power, only 230 brake horsepower, front engine rear wheel drive, and that means you really do need to push them hard in order to get out to a lap time. So it is a risk versus reward, and every mile an hour matters, but taking a couple of miles an hour too many does start to hurt you quite significantly. Because Hendricks comes on through, and indeed it will be Ranieri coming to the timeline first. Ranieri comes across line. What's it going to be here as he crosses on through? It is going to be provisional pole, but still waiting for a lot of times coming in, and we see the times really pouring in, and a couple of primes doing very well there, including Milan Harris, as we see here the Rockefeller Racing pink pair of Harris and Kroon working together early on as they make the way on through. It turns at 2 and 3 and coming on down towards 4 very shortly, in fact up towards 4. I think here we could see the two franchise really try to make themselves count in amongst the pros, and well, it would be very different if we were to see a Pro-Am driver take pole position overall. Indeed, it's very rare that happens in the middle of the pack Racing League series, but when it does, it's of course something to be celebrated. It goes to show you that the Pro-Ams are pushing above their weight. But meanwhile, looking at the drivers who have yet to get a lap on the board, we look to Samuel Cran for Team Bear Pope as the 160 driver makes his way on towards the timeline. This will be his first flying lap that's achieved, and as he crosses the line, what's it going to be? Well, he moves there to P20 at 155.684. I think trying to give himself a bit more space on the lap, and therefore going as late as possible. He's got to be wary of the fact that with only 3 minutes left, plus this lap, he'll have 2 more after this one. In fact, he won't have 2 more. He'll only have 1 more after this lap he's currently moved on to. So therefore, he's running out of time. Indeed, all of our drivers out on the circuit at the moment are running low on time. And, well, have we got any shocks or surprises at the moment? Well, perhaps the biggest one of them all, Jason Landry, currently P21, but 24.1 seconds off of the overall pole time. And I think Landry, much like Gran and also William Speaker, just having another reference lap, making sure it's a valid lap, so that way they're not seen as wasting time on circuit, but at the same time not going full attack at the moment and waiting for that opportunity. And of course, Jason Landry, our Pro Championship leader, as he makes his way through turn 9 and up towards 10 and 11. We're seeing a little bit more shuffling up towards the front as we see a flash of the lights there for Landry. I think he's worried about the fact that the driver in front of him may be obscuring him very shortly, and as he comes on through there, we can see the car of the number 72 machine, and that's Jordan Butler just steering clear, and Jordan Butler having a cool down, in fact an outlap after going back to the pits, heading on out onto circuit, Aaron Lar goes up to P7 on 38.107. Still 2 minutes left in the session, but Milan Harris is currently the top of the timing sheets in Pro class and overall when all classes are put together on that grid. And well, we can see Ilias Beaker moves up to P7, finally getting a valid lap on the board in terms of valid compared to the rest of the field, not just valid in terms of qualifying sake. And as they make their way up towards the next set of corners here, Will Harris will be wary of the fact that Landry has just gone faster by 23 thousandths, and Landry with a 37.113. Can he go a little bit further? Samuel Cran only goes P18 with 39.473. It does seem as though Cran is struggling a little bit at the moment in his qualifying session. But as we look to John Kroom, tucked in behind another car in front of him, we're just trying to discern who that is. But some of you may be wondering, well, what about Alberto Alvarez versus Logan McKenzie? Well, here is Logan McKenzie, the 104 driver, your Prime Championship and Cup leader going into tonight. And, well, McKenzie currently P7. Alvarez, by comparison, yet to get a lap on the board. And Alberto Alvarez in the 167 car heading up towards 10 and 11. If he doesn't get a strong lap in this time, this could really be the nail that starts to go into the proverbial coffin of his championship. And I say that not to undermine him, but the fact that he needs to be up there in order to take the fight to McKenzie, or he's going to have an absolutely mammoth task to try and come through the field, because rounds are running out, drop scores are ever present, and therefore he does need a win tonight over McKenzie, or at least a finish in front of him to bring that championship a little bit closer. But as he comes through turns 14 and 15 up towards 16 here, we'll wait to see what time comes on the board for Alvarez. He'll have one more lap to go as he comes out the final corner, but this has got to be an important one initially to set himself up for success. And as he crosses the timeline, we see DeVries moves P11, Alvarez only P14. Alvarez has left it all to the final lap, and well, can he pull it off? We'll wait to see the next time around. Meanwhile, we do look from him to Jason Landry, who's coming to the timeline, and Landry, Jerome Bajulas behind. In fact, that's not Jerome Bajulas, that's Jordan Butler behind as he heads across the timeline. What's it going to be for Landry? It's a 37.1 currently. He improves to 36.981, and Jordan Butler improves to 37.658, moving in P5. Landry and Butler both have another lap available to them. Checker flag is now out, so therefore anybody who's not out on circuit on a lap, they will not be able to put in any more for qualifying laps. And we can see in terms of the AM class, it's very close amongst all the AM drivers, and Bernardi only in the end 2 places up from Mark Senegal in terms of P13 through to P15, Takahashi P21, and that's a little bit of a shock there, and I think that is definitely going to see and send reverberations through the AM class in terms of the fact that Takahashi is looking vulnerable here today, at least based on qualifying pace. But meanwhile, we look back to John Kroom as he ascends his way through turns 14 and 15, and as he begins to descend back down towards turn 16, albeit a very slight drop to turn 16. You can see him here right now, P3, 3/10 off of Landry's pole time and trying to get onto that front row, but Milan Harris is there and in the pit lane. Well, Kroom crosses the line, he does not improve. Meanwhile, we've got Mika Hendricks to the line here, and what can the Beavers Energy driver do? P7 currently does not improve either, as we've also got James Carr heading through the final corner. And what will it be for James Carr as he makes his way to the timing line? Well, I think he'll feel as though it's going to need to be a significant improvement. He's currently P12. He crosses the line, and it's not an improvement for James Carr, and Alberto Alvarez crosses the line. He's currently P14. Alvarez does not improve, and the frustration, I think, there has definitely shown as he's taking it to the wall. And for Alvarez, it's a weak qualifying session relative to his main rival, and now this really does open up what is the opportunity for Logan McKenzie to put the championship almost to bed come the end of today. But as we do see it, John Butler heading to the timeline. This will be the last lap in this qualifying session from anybody, and he does not improve there. He stays P5. Well, that's qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. It's Jason Landry on pro and overall pole. It's Milan Harris on the front row alongside him in P2 for pro and pole. And in P13 overall, it's Samuel Bernardi who takes AM pole. Subject to confirmation, we transfer over to the grid for our one and only race. Indeed, that's going to happen in only a few seconds' time. But a lot of shocks there in qualifying. And Alvarez, perhaps the biggest shock of them all. Fernando Takahashi as well, right up there in terms of the fact qualifying well down in the AM class and overall. Meanwhile, at the other end, Milan Harris and John Kroom, P2 and P3, subject to confirmation. With that stands, they put themselves right in between all the pro drivers. They separated Landry from the rest of his pro peers, and I think Landry, if he can get the run into what is turn number 1, he may be able to just break away. Well, we're not going to take a break then, ladies and gentlemen. We head straight onto the grid. So this is how they line up for our first and only race of the day. Jason Landry takes pole position for round 10 of the Cruising USA GR86 Championship for Sunday GT Turtles, 1.5 tenths clear of Millen Harris of Rockefeller Racing Pink. Then they'll have alongside them on the row behind John Croom for Rockefeller Racing Pink and Francois Schink in P4, and it's Jordan Butler for DNA Motorsports and Carl Renew on row number 3. On row 4, it's Ilya Speaker for Rockefeller Racing Pink, joined by Pan Am Racing's Alberto Alvarez, with Mika Hendricks and Logan McKenzie on row number 5. Aaron Lahr and Jay DeVries line up on row at number 6, and they'll be followed up by the pair on row 7 at James D. Carr and Samuel Bernardi, your confirmed and pole sitter. And then P15 on row number 8, it's Sunday GT Turtles Mark Senegal, joined by MOP Jedi's Fernando Takahashi. Donald Seepet and Dan Victor line up on row at number 9, with the 10th row being completed by Ian Hennebury and Kirk Lane. Glenn Bratton and Samuel Cran on row at number 11, followed up by Dylan Valinga and Jack Davis P23 and P24. And on row at number 13, it's Billman DaCosta and Jerome Bajulaz, with then all the classes standing on the grid. It's 26 drivers who've taken to qualifying. It's 26 drivers who will take to the grid for our race today. And we've only got a couple of drivers yet to get into the spots on the grid. And Lee Porter, of course, in the race direction booth. We're just waiting on James Carr to be in position. And then we will be going racing for 30 minutes of sprint action here at the Barber Motorsports Park in the state of Alabama. With all our drivers now set, and of course James Carr the only one not filling his grid position at the moment, but he does still have 20 seconds to do so. We do say hello to Lee Porter there, or Max LP80 in the Twitch chat, who's confirmed for us about Bernardi's AM pole position. But you can see that Bernardi, in fact, in the end, only 2 places clear of Takahashi. So once that grid has been refactored, it does look a little bit more pleasing for Takahashi. Alvarez PA versus McKenzie. In fact, there the inversion, that's an important one to note. That's Alvarez actually having a better qualifying session compared to McKenzie. But the grid is set. It's time for the lights. And it's lights out and away we go for round number 10 of the championship as Jason Landry looks to get a good run into turn 1. It looks to be a good launch as Millen Harris meanwhile tries to hold off John Croom, and we can see there Croom trying to go on the inside as they make the way through the opening corner, but charging up towards turns 2 and 3 where everybody makes their way safely on through. Carl Renew batting side by side with what is there Ilya Speaker. In fact, Speaker comes on through and Francois Schink being given the elbow out as they make their way through 2, 3 and up towards 4. Landry's had a great start by comparison with the rest of the field, who's just been allowed to run away with things. Samuel Bernardi a little bit further back side by side with James Carr as Carr looks to try and hold off the AM Riser as they make their way down to the braking zone for turn 5. This is where it all gets nip and tuck for the first time, and Aaron Lahr there on the inside of Jay DeVries, not worrying too much there about the pressure being put on, but who's been made the biggest gains at the start? Well, Dylan Valinga gaining 2 places off the line. Jerome Pagel has 3 places a little bit further back, but Valinga here trying to hold off what is Glenn Bratton just behind as Bratton backs out in the run down towards turn number 7. But indeed from towards the back of the field we look back up towards the front of the field, and Jason Landry leads. They make the way out of turn number 9, and the gap to Millen Harris is already growing to 7 tenths. As they make the way in towards turn 11, we can see a bit further back how Logan McKenzie and Francois Schink. Well, we've got Francois Schink trying to go on the offensive versus Ilya Speaker. McKenzie under pressure from Alberto Alvarez, and Alvarez behind Logan McKenzie and losing out early on in this race after qualifying ahead of him when all was said and done. Well, the 2 prime belligerents going toe to toe. Aaron Lahr there side by side with Jay DeVries. DeVries around the outside through turn at number 13, and as they make the way in turn 14 and 15, well, Lahr here trying to come back as soon as possible, but he's not going to be able to this time. Meanwhile, Samuel Bernardi looking up the inside of James Carr with Mark Senegal breathing down his neck as they make the way into the final corner to complete lap number 1. And Bernardi going a little bit deep. Mark Senegal looks on the inside. Oh, goodness me! And there's contact there between Senegal, and I believe that's Fernando Takahashi who's coming to contact with him. Senegal tried to sweep wide. It was free wide for a brief moment, but Senegal wasn't aware of it. And as they cross the timeline, well, Fernando Takahashi gets ahead of Mark Senegal, and Senegal under pressure for Dan Vitcher because they make the way through turn 1. But Vitcher falls back on the outside line. In Hennebury also trying to get into the mix here as the battle inside the top 5 of the AM class is absolutely growing in terms of tension. The tension is so palpable right now as they make the way through turn 4 and down towards 5. You think this was the final race of the season, but it's not. We've still got 2 more after today to go. But as they head down towards turn 5, Hennebury looking to defend versus what is Vitcher on the inside. Vitcher trying to hold the position on the outside meanwhile, but he can't quite hold it there. It's going to be a drag race out of the corner. Down towards turn 7, they're going in. Hennebury gets it done for now, or does he, as Vitcher once again now brings himself out onto the inside line, but it's going to be a very close-knit run into the turn 7 apex. That right hand Fernando beckons, and who's going to be the one who backs out first? It will be Dan Bitcher. Behind them, meanwhile, we do have Willis Don Seepeck and Kirk Lane fighting. The Bearpoat Racing and the team Bearpoat driver fighting hard here, but as they make the way out of turn number 9 and up towards turn 11, in that Bearpoat Racing versus what is Bearpoat Zero, of course, the two sister divisions. They head on through it, and it's the Bearpoat Racing driver who stays ahead for now in that battle for P7 in the Pro-Am class and P20 on circuit. But meanwhile, looking back up to the front of the field after 1.5 laps, in fact almost 2 laps now, it's Jason Landry who leads ahead of Milan Harris in P2. We have John Crew in P3, followed by John Butler P4, Carl Ranieri P5, gaining 1 place off the line. Elias Speaker P6 ahead of Francois Schink P7. Next Logan McKenzie ahead of Alberto Alvarez in the battle for P8, P9, with Mika Hendricks completing the top 10 and Jay DeVries in P11. Jay DeVries, they're doing a little bit of rallycross on the exit of the final corner. He's got to be careful of that. Track limits and all, plus Aaron Lars very close and beckoning the bars, and DeVries here wants to get a little bit closer to Alvarez. Oh my good lord, and that's Logan McKenzie into the wall. He's got it wrong at turn 1, and that released Alberto Alvarez, but Alvarez will slide, and as he makes his way through turn 3, Hendricks comes on through, and Alvarez can't afford to drop any positions. Of course, for those uninitiated, this is not championship, it's scored based on class finishing position, it's scored based on overall finishing position, and Alvarez needs every point to keep the hunt well and truly alive as he makes his way through turn number 5. As they make the way out towards turns at 7, 8 and 9, and down they go. We can see here Alvarez staying close, and Hendricks just keeping his calm right now as they make the way in towards the right, left, right once again. Meanwhile, a bit further back, we can see that Glenn Bratton falling a little bit further back here, tucked in behind Kirk Lane, but the AM driver still trying to pick his way through. He hasn't gained or lost anything since the start of the race, but he now definitely wants to start gaining as the privateer. But meanwhile, we had an instant for Mika Hendricks. That's Hendricks round on the exit of turn 9, points in the wrong direction, having to wait for the entire field to clear, but just trying to right the car in terms of its direction a little bit earlier than he can as they make the way on through, and you can see everybody scoring their way past the Stricken Beavers Energy car. Well, now he can get himself up to speed. That's putting him all the way to the back of the pack. Meanwhile, we look to Carl Ranieri, and Ranieri here in the number 4 car, we're not in number 4 car, number 4 position car we should say, the number 84 car. There's a 4 in there somewhere, and as he makes his way through turn 16, he's falling a little bit back over Harrison Kroom, and well, Milan Harrison Kroom have absolutely nailed the start, and in fact Harris right now seems to be starting to catch up to Jason Landry as he makes his way through turns 1 and 2 on that last lap. Landry was a tenth faster, but Harris is keeping that gap steady at 5 tenths. It was 7 tenths after the opening lap, and I wonder here whether the Rockefeller Racing Pink duo of Harris and Kroom will firstly, whether they feel absolutely overjoyed already in the cars that they're leading by quite a margin in the prime class, but also secondly, the prospect here, they're fighting for overall podium, and they could also be fighting for the overall win. Well, time will tell in terms of how Landry tries to keep them at bay, whether he breaks away or not. But meanwhile, there's been a further spin on the final corner for Mika Hendricks, but Francois Schink charging his way on down here in the battle for what is P6 versus Elias Speaker, and the pros and the prams stay very equal on pace, and we have seen a number of rounds this season where the pros and the prams have intermingled quite closely, but nothing like this today. We've really got a split on. It's a pro ahead of 2 prams, then 2 pros, and then it's Pro-Am, Pro, Pro-Am, Prime, Pro, and you can mix that up there. But the key thing about this is with such a mixture, you would imagine they're all part of one class and not segregated into 2. But as they make the way on through and breaking down the barriers in terms of pace, meanwhile we look a little bit further back to the AM leader, and this is Samuel Bernardi who is holding off Fernando Takahashi as they make the way through 12 and 13. But notice in front how DeVries, Aaron Takei, Aaron Lart and James Carr behind, and that's in the battle for P9, and Bernardi starting to encroach on this as we have got a car off, and that is Alberto Alvarez. Alvarez off at turn 14, and the Pan Am Racing driver having to be towed to the pits. It's a disaster for Alvarez, like it is for Logan McKenzie. Well, McKenzie had it go wrong. McKenzie's back out on circuit, but he's in P24, and if they can't get that car that Alvarez is fixed, well, how the fortunes have turned in the space of a lap. The Pro-Am Championship contenders have both had a nightmare at Barber Motorsports Park in the opening 10 minutes of this race, and both of them with wounds now trying to pick up the pieces. But meanwhile, we continue to watch Bernardi, who's closed up behind Carr and Law, and as they make their way through turn 4, we jump on board here with the 212 machine, and for Samuel Bernardi, I think at this point in time, 9 of Fernando Takahashi's behind him. He will not want to just sit here and watch. He's been a bit of a spectator in some races. Indeed, you may remember in the first cup of the season in the Big State Cup, Bernardi in some circumstances just sitting behind a pack of prams battling and then trying to pick up a place at the very end. Well, here's has got Fernando Takahashi behind 4 tenths off. He can't afford to wait, because with DeVries going defensive there into turn 7, that's going to cost last speed, and James Carr will then start to concertina in. Bernardi will follow into that concertina motion, and as they make the way out turn 9, up towards turn 11 they go. You can see James Carr trying to slalom his way on around, trying to serpentine his way into position, but Bernardi just staying there, watching on and waiting to see when he can pounce on this. He's going to have to seize an opportunity, because La and also DeVries very good on pace here as they make their way into the second half of the lap. Breaking the way down into turns at 12 and 13. It's going to get very close, and Bernardi once again having to back off. Takahashi is also backing off behind in order to respect this as they make the way up towards turn 15. Bernardi sees the doors open. Carr's left it open. There's a little bit of a nudge there in terms of getting James Carr to open the door up a little bit more, albeit no contact to the cars, but James Carr having to open the steering when he wanted to close it. But as they make the way out of turn 16, that's of course what the racing's all about. You've got to put yourself there, and Bernardi on the inside as they make the way into turn number 1, and they come on through. He's going all in here, but James Carr had the inside into turn number 2. Keep an eye on Takahashi in the red machine as they make the way through 2 and 3. He's trying to stay nice and close as well as they make the way on down and around. Carr goes a little bit deep, he goes to the grass, and Bernardi comes on through, but now it's Takahashi who tries to pick his way through as well. He's saying to James Carr, look, you've got to let me through as well. It's not just one at a time. This is 2 for 1 special as they make the way down to turn 5, and you can understand because the Brazilian right now, he needs to beat Bernardi to keep himself well in the hunt, albeit if he does finish behind Bernardi, it's not all over, but every point's critical between them as they make the way up towards turn 7, but Takahashi has found his way into P11. James Carr drops to P12, and Mark Senegal now all over the back of James Carr. Very shortly he'll be open as they make the way down towards 7, 8 and 9, with James Carr immediately trying to go on the counter-offensive versus Fernando Takahashi after losing those 2 places. But meanwhile, as they make the way on through, we have got a little bit of battle building behind them between Jerome Virgilis, the pro driver, and Ian Henneberry, the AM, as they make their way up towards 10 and 11, and through the left into right they go. Virgilis very close here, and Henneberry almost understeering a little bit wide. Virgilis switches back to the inside. He sells it in following so close to Henneberry, and then decides, right, I'm going all in. It's going to be hard. We're left into right complex, a very sharp right-hander and uphill, but Virgilis absolutely nailing the momentum he can carry up the hill, and that just goes to show you why he's in the pro class with the amount of speed he just found coming off of the turn 13 apex. And now the number 99 driver moves up to P14 for Beaver Buzz, but as he heads through turn 16, we can see Dan Vikchuk behind Ian Henneberry, and these two now started to get ready to exchange blows. For Henneberry, of course, losing some momentum in the uphill run, given the way that Virgilis was able to pull off that brilliant move. And as they make their way across the timeline, they move into the next 10 minutes of the race. 10 minutes complete, 20 still to go. We move it into the second of the 3 at thirds, and as they make their way down towards 22 turns 2 and 3, merging them together, let's call them turn 23, will be. And as they make their way up the hill towards turn number 4, we've got a little bit of coming together. In fact, we've had a coming together for Samuel Bernardi, and I believe also another driver in the form. We're not quite sure what's happened, but Fernando Takahashi, the net result we can confirm is that the MOP Jedi driver has got ahead for the lead of the AM class. Mark Senegal behind, and we are trying to get some confirmation as to what happened. We believe that Samuel Cran had an off track, well, not Samuel Cran, Samuel Bernardi had a slight off track coming out of turn number 4, albeit we haven't got any data that actually confirms that. In fact, it may have just been a slight slide or a spin going through the corner and some contact, but either way, James Carr's round, and Bernardi having to take evasive action. Well, there, the pro driver coming off of turn number 9. Again, we don't see the cause or the midpoint, we only see the outcome, and well, it's the pro who's gone all the way round, where Bernardi also losing some key places. A number of the Giants are falling, and how it's going so wrong for James Carr after everything was going so well at Road Atlanta last week. As Glenn Bratton tries to go around the outside, James Carr puts his foot down and says, no more please. And as they make the way into turns 12 and 13, Bratton will fall in behind. But as they head up towards turn number 14, we do get confirmation with regards to the teams that it is a reverse grid racing is made up of 2 individuals. We'll talk more about them shortly. Focus on what's here at hand, and that is that right now Ilya Speaker trying to find their way past Jordan Butler side by side with Francois Schenk, and you see it, John Kroom there has been passed by Carl Ranieri off camera. Milan Harris by comparison still happy, and in fact John Kroom has had an off track quite recently coming out the final corners. We're hearing in at my right earpiece, and therefore it's for Kroom a drop to P4, and now willing the fight to try and stay inside the top 5. But as meanwhile Francois Schenk goes up the inside of Ilya Speaker, takes P6, and Speaker not putting up too much of a fight here, and you can understand why. The reasoning being that for Speaker, they want to try and stay with this pack rather than fall off of it. But as they make their way down towards turn 7, 8 and 9, things calm down for a brief moment, but John Crim, as we ride on board the gearbox of the Rockefeller Racing Pink driver, under that growing pressure from his peers behind, and will Jordan Butler in particular trying to make a move, but they're going to be overly deep under braking into turn 9, and therefore falling backwards towards Francois Schenk as they make their way in towards turns at 10 and 11. Now, what will be the attitude change here from Butler? Will he go full defensive through the next corners, or will he decide to simply hold firm? Well, it does look as though he's staying in place at the moment as they make their way through 12 into 13. But you can see as they come up the hill here how close it is getting between the two of them as they make their way onto the brakes, but no exchange. Instead, they stay as they are as they make their way going into turn 15 and down towards 16. But meanwhile, we do get a brief refresh of the overlay there, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, the overlay will come back to us very shortly. We do apologise for that. It does seem to disappear, but it does rematerialise, and that is because we are updating some driver data midway through the race, and that's with regards to the team for Reverse Grid Racing, which is a combination of Jay DeVries and Dylan Valinga. But meanwhile, as we continue to watch the battles going on here, we see Aaron Love right now holding of DeVries as they make their way through turn 1 into 2. DeVries trying to stay there with his rivals. They make their way on around the corners, and will Jay DeVries right now really trying to put that pressure on. He can't quite find it at this time, but you can imagine he's itching for the position, and if he can find it, then all the better for him as he makes his way further and further into this race. But as they make their way down towards it, turns at 10 and 11 now, things will calm down between them. But before they get there, they've got to go to turn at number 5, and I think the flow here is for Aaron Lodge just to hold on to the position as long as he can, whilst he can, with DeVries just falling back to 5/10 off, but making the way up towards turn 7, 8 and 9. Number 47 driver here having a little bit of a breather before he then tries to press on for the next drivers up the road, as again we do get a brief refresh of our overlay there, ladies and gentlemen, and that is because we've now got the driver data fully loaded for DeVries and also Valinga as they make the way out towards turn 10 and 11 now. You can see that gap has opened up. Meanwhile, we look back here to Francois Schenk versus Jordan Butler, and will Schenk on the inside there versus Butler, going for the move. He goes a bit over deep. There's a lot of confidence here, and Butler swings it back. It's a lovely cut back from Butler there, and Francois Schenk went in hot, just came in a little bit too hot on the trigger, and for Jordan Butler, it is just simply let your opponent make the mistake and pick it up yourself as they make the way through turn at number 16 now, and Jordan Butler really showing a lot of calm and a lot of patience to make that move count. Other drivers would have backed off there and not seen an opportunity to come back, but not Jordan Butler as the DNA Motorsports driver makes his way into turn number 1. And we say hello to Jason Landry in the YouTube chat, who enjoyed the move earlier from Jerome Bajulaz, and I think you'll enjoy that move as well by Jordan Butler to come back at Francois Schenk, who goes a little bit deep there, carrying through turns 2, but meanwhile Ilya Speaker gets it wrong. A little bit of excessive counter steer there through turn 2 into 3, and Ilya Speaker for Rockefeller Racing Pink ends up on the grass for a brief moment, when it's not more than a brief hiatus before he gets back on the asphalt and goes chasing after Francois Schenk. But meanwhile, looking from Speaker to further down the order, we've got Donald Sepek trying to make the move here versus Samuel Gran, and well, who's who? I hear you ask. Well, Sepek in the Bear Pope livery with the green wing and green rims. Meanwhile, behind that is Samuel Cran with the purple wing mirrors and also the purple rear wing. And as they come through turns 2 and 3 and up towards 4, Don Sepek getting the move around the outside of Cran, in fact, as they head up towards turn number 5, but charging on their way up through the gearbox. We can also see Wes Mika Hendricks behind Alberto Alvarez just up the road. And as they come through turn 5, half the race complete, still half to go. And will we look here to Jason Landry, who right now, I think he felt as though he'd have it all in the clear. Well, he's not going to, because Milan Harris is all over the back of him. And here's the Pro-Am leader who you're riding on board with versus the Pro leader as they make the way towards the end of this current lap. Now, Milan Harris, of course, will have the bit between his teeth, because this will be a very rare occasion where he has got the pro leader and the overall leader all to himself. We have never seen a circumstance like this in the championship to date, where the top two are literally the leaders of their classes, and then they have got a gap of 4 seconds to the next driver, and that's Carl Ranieri. Now, Ranieri is closing gradually when these two fight, but the thing is, when they're not fighting, the lap times right now are fully in favour of Harris and Landry by 3/10 a lap. So I think for Ranieri, he's going to have to hope they really do start start to take it to one another, because if not, now I think Harris and Landry are just going to have this battle all to themselves for the remainder, and it means that opportunities will go and miss as they make their way through turn 5. Notice the difference in lines there between Harris and Landry. Of course, Harris had to deal with a little bit of dirty air coming off of the rear of Landry's car, but the key thing is going for that earlier apex, and it doesn't quite set him up this time, but I think he's trying to experiment with where he can gain that time in the run to the next corner, because again, Barber Motorsports Park, like a number of circuits on this calendar, one that's all about that flow, about carrying the speed to the next set of corners in a sequence, and Harris really trying to exploit that, but falling back a little bit as he comes out of turn number 9, and Landry starting to just bring that gap back up to a more comfortable zone. But you imagine if he even makes the smallest of mistakes, Harris is going to be right there and ready to pounce after him. As they come down towards 12 and 13, well, no exchange at the moment, or will there be, as Landry there back it off a little bit to get a nice smooth line. Harris going full attack by comparison, gaining a temp into the corner, and as they come through turns 14 and 15, this is where Harris just has so much more confidence in carrying speed. He's not afraid to really take it to Landry. So it's the first half of the lap as Landry's ready up to the end of turn 9, and in the second half of the lap from turn 10 all the way to the end of it, that's where Harris is at his strongest, and here he's very close. He thinks about it, he thinks about it again. Well, he's got to make his mind up soon as they get ready to break into turn 1, and in the end Harris backs off and Landry takes the speed on through, but brilliant racing between these two, and Carl Ranieri behind as he makes his way past our cameraman into turn 1, and he's got John Kroom only 1.5 seconds off, and Kroom by comparison is closing quite gradually towards Ranieri at the moment. The gap between the two of them now 1.5 seconds, but as they make their way up towards turn at number 4, we look back to the AM lead battle, and this is Fernando Takahashi who's chasing after the pro Jerome Bajulas, but he's got his AM rival Mark Senegal only 5 tenths behind. And Takahashi now starting to knock on the door of the top 10 drivers. They make their way up towards turn 4, and he'll be wanting to gain another place for the simple reason that he'll want to gain more points, but also put another driver between himself and his closest peer. But that's one thing in theory. Will he be able to find it in practice? As they come through turn number 5, I think it may be a little bit much for him to do right now as they come off the corner. And notice the difference in the exit line there as well, where Pajula's able to just bring the car over to the left-hand side to set up turns 7, 8 and 9 much more rapidly compared to Takahashi, but Takahashi carrying a lot more speed in the run on down, but it's not a long enough stretch of straight to be able to find that pace to make the move on the inside. And I think that Pajula's right now feeling quite comfortable in terms of how he's setting up the car and repositioning it from corner to corner over each lap. Meanwhile, on the back of this battle, we look back to Samuel Bernardi, who does have Ian Henneberry and Dan Victor behind him. He's currently P3. He's only 5 seconds off the Senegal Takahashi battle for P1 in the AM class, but I think he's got to worry about Henneberry and Victor, who are both staying with him and keeping him honest as he makes his way down towards 12 and 13. Onto the brakes they go here, and as they come on through, only 10 minutes remain by the time they clear this lap, and as they come up the hill right now, it is definitely looking as though Bernardi is on the back foot slightly, as Henneberry and Richard staying with him as they head up towards 15. But of course, closing is one thing, overtaking is another, and as they come through the right into left to turn 16, you can see that Victor not quite able to get the direction change covered off as rapidly, and I think now the tyres are starting to take a bit of a feel. But meanwhile, as they make their way down towards turn number 1, we're hearing that Landry versus Harris are going toe-to-toe, but Bernardi erring to defend into turn 1, and as they go onto the brakes, he's going to have a compromised exit line. He doesn't quite get the door shut, he brings it over just in time, Henneberry, and as they make their way through 2 into 3, we look back from the gearbox of Bernardi's car, and we see Henneberry here continuing to hound his rivals. They make their way through 4 into 5, and as they come over the crest, and now they descend into the left-hander, well, Bernardi puts the car in the middle, and as he brings it out, he's going to open up the corner. Henneberry then goes hot on the brakes, and well, Bernardi's got to be careful there, because I think Henneberry is trying to make a swing for a move, not quite able to. Henneberry trying to go for it on the brakes, but in the end just finding himself a couple of yards short of where he needed to be to go all in on the inside, and Bernardi definitely dancing with his opponent at the moment as they make their way down towards turn number 9. But as they drop down, we were just about to mention that Jason Landry at one moment did fall behind Milan Harris for a brief moment of time, and these two definitely starting to push the tempo, as meanwhile Carl Ranieri is a whole 7.3 seconds off of them by comparison. And it goes to show these two are absolutely flying in pace, and they are pushing one another to the ultimate heights as the time goes on. You can see it visually, that gap, the 7-second gap, as they make their way into turn 1 once again. Now to lap number 14 in this race, and as they come into turns 2 and 3, well, right now Landry clear by 6 tenths, but still 9 that Harris could strike at any moment. But meanwhile, as we look from them back to Donald Seapet, we can see here the Bear Pope Racing driver in P19 holding off Samuel Cram for P19, and the drivers, both in the Prime class here, batting for P6 in the class as they make their way on through and down towards what is there. Excuse me, turn number 3 as they wait. In fact, that is turn number 15, we should say. They're very similar in terms of their perspectives on camera, albeit as they make their way in towards the left-hander that completes the lap. A bit off the pace, but still enjoying the race. And meanwhile, we look to Ian Henry, who has found his way off camera up into P3 in the AM class, the Bear Pope Zero driver. He's got Bernardi behind him now, and Dan Vitchuk trying to make another move. And the move being made into turn 1 as we're to understand it. But Vitchuk here close. He's not close enough to consider it into turn 5. Bernardi there going quite tight to the apex. Henry gets a poor run off the corner. Well, now it's all going to be about the drag race into the next corner. Bernardi backs off for a brief moment, but this could be a feint. He's trying to give Henry some confidence, but I think Bernardi here thinking about the bigger picture, which is set out the run from turn 9 to turns 10 and 11, whereas they make their way down the drop now into the right hand. He's going all in. It's very close. There's contact between the two of them, but they both keep pointing in the same direction. I think that Bernardi seeing the door open on the inside, and Henry seeing that Bernardi went for it, deciding, right, we're going to make contact, but I'm just going to completely stop the race here. We're going to park it on the apex, straighten our cars and go racing once again. It's great respect shown between the pair, but this shows you just how important it is to Bernardi to get through as he looks on the inside again. But Henry shuts the door there as they make the way into 12 and 13, and up the hill they go. Samuel Bernardi really being put through his paces here today. It's a very different race with the 2-1-2 drive, with Takashi leading the AM class still in P11, and Bernardi trying so hard to move into P3 in the class of P13 overall. But as they head through the final corner again, Henry just gets such a strong run over turns 15 and 16. He opens the gap back up, and they make their way to the timeline this time. Time is running out for Bernardi if he wants to get into place, and time is running out for Vitchuk to try and make the move as well and get into this fight as they head up towards turn 2 and 3. Meanwhile, we look back to leaders here, and Landry under more pressure from Milan Harris as they come down into turn number 9. Through they go, and as they do, Harris now only 3.5 tenths off. He's cut the gap in half since we last looked at it, and as they power their way out towards 10 and 11, they stay as they are for now. Meanwhile, Francois Sheik, he's just dropped behind Jordan Butler, who's found his way back into P5. That is P3 in the pro class, but the difference between the two of them is absolutely negligible, as we can see behind Valinga, who has had to come into the pits and therefore is a lap down after an instant earlier on in the race. Unfortunate, but he's pushed it on as best as he can. 6 minutes remaining on the clock here. That does equate after this lap to what will be another 3 laps of racing, and well, the racing is becoming ever more tense at certain points in the field, and as we can see here, Sheik right now falling a little bit off of Butler, but he does still have a couple more laps in order to try and mount a counter-offensive. But as we look from them to P5 in the AM class, P15 overall, Dan Vitchuk here, he is staying close to Bernardi this time, the closest he's been for some time, and I think Vitchuk is now looking for that move, albeit in 12 and 13. It's not going to be too tangible here to try and make that move. It is a very narrow run out of 13, albeit we did see Bajulas pull off an absolutely wonderful run around the outside earlier on, but Vitchuk needs to have a lot of momentum to try and do that and replicate that brave move. But as he comes down through 15, he gets the run off of 15, and look at this for the distance between the two of them. Only 2 attempts as they made their way to 16. But he's had to back it off slightly. I think Vitchuk just coming to the apex a little bit too prematurely, and therefore bleeding the speed he needs into turn 1 in order to keep that gap down at 2.5 tenths. That's where he needs to be. I don't think Vitchuk will be able to do it unless he gets in that zone, unless Bernardi makes an error. And that's not to say Vitchuk hasn't got the pace. He just does not seem to be able to get closer than 2 tenths, and that's why he needs to condense this gap. And this is where he needs to be right now as he comes out of turn 4. He needs to be here, but all the way through the lap as much as he possibly can, and closing up there on the straightaways. He'll find himself in 1.5 tenths and he can look for the move. But as he comes down here, no exchange at the moment, but he's still keeping that pressure on in the 2-1-3 machine. A good run off the corner, however, and I think this may be the door opening for Vitchuk as he looks on the inside. Bernardi's going to squeeze it as much as he can. It's going to be a very tight run into turn 7. Bernardi opens the door back up, and Vitchuk is compromised and he has to back off. Bernardi being very smart and where he's defending the car and putting it in terms of its position. But meanwhile, we look back to the battle here for P8 overall, and it's Ilya Speaker versus Jay De Vries, and De Vries will, after difficulties for his teammate, the reverse grid racing driver, going on the offensive here as they make the way on around and doing everything in his power to try and just find a little bit more in terms of pace and places with the time coming to a close. But as he makes his way on down in towards turn number 1 once more, carrying all the speed he can and heading on towards the left-hander, it's looking good at the moment for him, but will he be able to find it come the end of the lap. That is going to be the challenge here. But it's, of course, trying to find those places ever tangible and ever critical. But he's not quite finding it at the moment as they make the way down through turn number 2 and 3. Then up towards 4 here, De Vries having to wait and look for another opportunity. And will he be able to find it in the run through turn 5? No, he's going to be sat there again. Speaking of 4 attempts clear, but it could be the run into turn 7, 8 and 9. But as we look from them back to Mika Hendricks. Well, Hendricks, the pro driver here for BMW's Energy with those 2 spins early on. Now finding his way back into the hunting there as he makes his way out of turn number, what is there, turn 4 and up towards 5, and looking to go for the move versus Bernardi on the inside here. And I think Bernardi and Witschek have both been disrupted as Witschek being passed there by Hendricks into turn 5. Bernardi will know it's coming from Hendricks as well, but it gives him a little bit of breathing room. But now does Bernardi fight this hard, and then he'll lose points to the championship if he doesn't fight it, or does he let it go, believing that Hendricks will get close enough to Henneberry and also Senegal and Takahashi before the end of the race? Well, we can tell you right now that Fernando Takahashi is 10 seconds clear of Mark Senegal. He is not being caught. Takahashi is going to finish in that P11 spot unless there is a major error, alternatively a failure of the car. And I think now for Bernardi, he may be aware of that. He may have been informed by the garage that he is having to battle against the points here, and Hendricks should not be let through in order to get as many points as possible at the end of this race. But Mika Hendricks is not known for waiting. He will try and pick his way through if he can. But meanwhile, we look back to the leaders here, and this is your pro leader, Jason Landry, overall leader as well. He has got Milan Harris all over the back of him. They make the way down towards turn number 5. Harris is going to have an opportunity. It's going to be on the brakes. It's going to be heavy all the way, but Harris backs off that and decides he can't go for it. I think Harris recognising there's another spot to have one more lap after this, given the amount of time remaining, and Harris can see all the opportunities now, and Landry will be aware of where Harris is strong and where he's weak by comparison with his own pace. And well, who is going to walk away with this one? The winner. Time will tell us that, but as we look to Samuel Bernardi, and we can see Hendricks up the inside of Ian Henneberry. Bernardi has found his way past Henneberry, only moments to go, and now he's up to P3 in the AM class. But as they make the way in towards turn number 4, Hendricks there on the inside, Bernardi on the outside, and Henneberry here carries the speed. It's going to be a bit of disruption from Hendricks, and then all the AM drivers come back together. Onto the brakes into turn 5 they go. Bernardi defends the inside. Hendricks looks at the cut, but there's a bit of contact there, I think, from Henneberry as well. Dan Witschek up the inside, and Witschek moves past Henneberry. He looks to run past Hendricks as well, but it's going to be a drag race up towards turn 7, and now Hendricks is going to defend as much as he can on that inside line. Witschek's not close enough to try and make it too wide into the apex of turn 7. He has to back off there, but he's got clear of Henneberry as they make the way in. Alvarez behind is a lap down. He can't really do anything in this scenario, but as they come down through turn number 9 and up towards turns 10 and 11, we look back to Fernando Takahashi. He's got Jerome Bergulas behind him, and Bergulas will recent instance drops a little bit further back behind the 10th place driver and the MOP Jedi driver, trying to hold on to that P10 to just gain some more points and give himself a bit more closure to that championship fight with Samuel Bernardi. But as they head into turn 15, Bergulas trying to go round the outside here, and he's known for making these outside moves so comfortably. As they come through turn number 16, he can't find it at the moment, but we've gone on to the final lap. They make the way onto the final lap, the 19th one to be turned here under race conditions. And meanwhile, Witschek versus Henneberry into turn 15. Witschek on the outside, he's covered it off there, and I think he's made the place count for what is P4 in the AM class. And Hendricks and Bernardi have already run away to a degree, but Henneberry's coming back here into turn 1. Witschek is aware of it as they make the way in. Meanwhile, we've got Valinga down the inside, back in the car under blue flags. Understandable, he's just trying to keep it clear. A bit of smoke being kicked up, somebody's locked it up on the brakes. But as they make the way into turn number 2, Witschek finally confirms the position. But we look from them to Landry versus Harris, and these are your leaders, and these are the drivers we'll stay with to the end of this race now as they make the way into what's the final 5 corners of the day. They come down towards turn number 12, and Landry in the lead, and Harris pushing him every step of the way. They've literally been nose to tail since the very start, and whilst Landry made some gains early on and thought he broke away, Harris has continued to follow him, but Harris not close enough here to really put the move on through the last couple of corners. Only one more corner to go for Landry. It's the left-hander at 16. It's looking good, and as he comes on down through the final corner, the checker flag awaits him, and Jason Landry returns to the top step. He takes the win as the checker flag waves. He takes the pro and oval win for Sunday GT Turtles ahead of Milan Harris, who is your second place overall finisher and your pro and finisher for Roccarella Base in pink. And then it is Carl Ranieri who takes takes third place overall, second in the Pro class, just ahead of John Croom. Croom their second place in the Prime class, P4 overall for Rockefeller Racing Pink. A great day for the outfit, ahead of Francois Schenk P5, Jordan Butler P6, and then Aaron Lahr P7 ahead of Ilias Speak and Jay DeVries. Fernando Takahashi comes to line, he holds off Jerome Bajulas, and he will take the AM win, P10 overall for MOP Jedi. Bajulas P11, and then it will be Mark Senegal who finishes at P12 for Sunday GT Turtles in a stellar drive for the Canadian. They're taking second place in the AM class ahead of Samuel Bernardi. And speaking of Samuel Bernardi, here he comes. He crossed the line. It's third place in class today. P13. It will damage his championship lead, but he still held off Mika Hendricks to lines. He hasn't lost as many points as he thought he might have. Ian Henry P15 ahead of Dan Vitcher, and then Glenn Bratton will come to a timeline with Logan McKenzie 8 laps down there, finishing the race in P25. Bratton P17 ahead of Donald Sepek, as we do see here Sepek crossing the line just ahead of Kirk Lane, the two teammates, well, in fact the sister rival teammates we should say, and then Samuel Cran who completes our top 20 for Bearpoint Racing in the 160 car. As he comes to the timeline here, he'll be our penultimate finisher on the lead lap. We'll give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Give them all a round of applause for what has been a stellar race. There's no doubt about it. And Jack Davis will be the last lead lap finisher. P21 there for Rockefeller Racing White. We also had the driver's finish of Alberto Alvarez, a lap down. Also, what was Dylan Valinga finishing 2 laps down in P23. P24 for Billman DaCosta, 2 laps down. And Logan McKenzie, 8 laps down in P25. And James D. Carr with that retirement, a one and only retiree, P26. But as we do look to Jason Landry leading a good portion of the field on around here towards the pit lane. What a race it has been for the Sunday GT Turtles driver, and also for Milan Harris. Well, as he comes past the pit lane once again, I think he's missed his pit lane by accident now. I think it is exuberance. You can understand why, but he kept the Pro Championship leader honest all the way through, and that is an achievement in its own right. And what about Fernando Takahashi? The championship fight is on in the AM class between him and Samuel Bernardi, with the two of them exchanging blows, and it's gone the way of Takahashi today. It will level the scores going into round number 11, and Bernardi will know now he's the one who's got the pressure to perform in the final sprint race of the season. And well, of course, the conversation point of the Pro-Am Championship, McKenzie and Alvarez both having a nightmare day, but it's perhaps rubbed in the wounds for Alvarez in the fact that when he had an opportunity to really close the gap up, he lost it. And now, with 2 rounds to go, it effectively means that McKenzie just needs to finish reasonably in order to take that crown in the Pro-Am class overall when the season ends. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, there's been drama, there's been plenty of battles, and there's been plenty of great racing today. But let's take you through those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries, and here they are. So after what has been 30 minutes of racing action at the Barber Motorsports Park in the state of Alabama, and well, what a round 10 it has been in the Cruising USA GR86 Championship for 2023, as hosted by Middle of the Pack Racing League, brought to you on the iRacing Simulator platform. Jason Landry confirmed there as your winner by half a second come the finish line for Sunday GT Turtles, your overall and pro winner ahead of the Pro-Am winner and second place finisher of Rockefeller Racing Pink, that's Milan Harris. Then further back, a whole 9 seconds back, Carl Ranieri in P3 there, completing the overall podium, and the privateer taking second place in the pro class ahead of John Croom, second place Pro-Am finisher, P4 overall. And the Rockefeller Racing Pink team having a phenomenal day today. All 3 drivers inside the top 10, and 2 of them inside the top 5, and 1 of them on the overall podium. Well, it can't get better than that in this field. Francois Schenk P5 there, the privateer having a strong drive as well, third place in the pro class. A bit of a quiet race as well, didn't get to talk too much about him for the simple reason I think he kept himself to himself and made sure to finish on the podium. And Jordan Butler just a little bit further back for DNA Motorsports in P6 there, missing out on the pro podium. Aaron Lahr P7 ahead of Ilias Speaker, who rounds off the slots on the Pro-Am podium. In fact, with Ilias Speaker taking P8 there, it does mean that it's a Rockefeller Racing Pink Pro-Am podium. All 3 drivers for the team, well, they'll be absolutely celebrating. I can imagine already there might be quite a bit of champagne being splashed around in the garage. Jay DeVries in P9 for Reverse Grid Racing. A great performance from DeVries, and I think thinking what could have been in that battle to be on the podium, but still he'll take that momentum going into the next round. And then Fernando Takahashi completes the overall top 10, and indeed your AM winner for Middle of the Pack Racing Jedi in that P10 position. The Brazilian having a great race, keeping Jerome Bergules behind at the very end. The BR's Energy driver best the rest in P11, ahead of the two AMs of Mark Senegal and Samuel Bernardi. They complete your AM podium. The Sunday GT Turtles drive ahead of the Privateer, and Bernardi 9. The scores have been level between himself and Takahashi. P14, Mika Hendricks, a difficult day for the BR's Energy driver, but kept his spirits up as much as he could and tried to go on the counter-offensive all the way to the end, but didn't quite work out for the 73 driver. And then Ian Henneberry, P15, P4 in the AM class, ruined what could have been, albeit with the interruption of Dan Vitchuk and also Hendricks stopping him from hunting down Bernardi. But the Bear Pope Zero driver will take confidence from this in the fact he had the pace today to challenge the championship leader. Dan Vitchuk, P16, ahead of Glenn Bratton, with Bear Pope races Donald Sepek completing the run to P18. And as we continue our way down through the finishing positions, Kirk Lane and Samuel Cram for Bear Pope Zero and Bear Pope Racing completing the top 20, with Jack Davis, P21, a difficult one for the Rockefeller Racing White driver, but he finished on the lead lap, and then a lap down Pan Am Races, Alberto Alvarez, P22, and again the difficulties of this championship continue to frustrate him, losing out in what was the race today and qualifying. Well, we thought he'd lost out in qualifying, but not as much, but an opportunity squandered. And then Dylan Villinger, P23 for Reverse Grid Racing ahead of Billman DaCosta, the Bear Pope Zero driver, retiring 4 laps down. Well, not retiring 4 laps down, finishing 4 laps down, we should say. And Logan McKenzie, our final finisher, 8 laps down there. The Prime Championship leader will have his lead dented, but not by much, given what happened to Alvarez. The only retiree of the day, our P26 driver there, retiring 11 laps from the end, James D. Carr, the pro driver. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, those are all the results, and what a race it has been today. But of course, with the racing concluded, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed today's show and you want to know more about the Middle of the Pack Racing League community, then why not check out either our official Discord, invite link available on screen. Perhaps you're sat there right now thinking, well, I want to be on the grid for this championship whilst there's 2 rounds remaining. Well, I do have to inform you, you won't be able to get on the grid because we have closed all registrations and sign-ups as of the commencement of round number 9. So that way we have locked in the drivers for the final cup of the season. But we are planning to host more leagues and championships later on this year, and definitely if you like the look of this league, well, you're going to like what's coming later on, but more on that later on in the next couple of weeks. Alternatively, if you just want to head to our social media, you can follow us on Twitter, and our Twitter is twitter.com/MOP Racing, where you can keep up to date with all the latest news on Middle of the Pack Racing League, and indeed the exploits of the official esports teams. But of course now, ladies and gentlemen, we look ahead to next time, and where we head to the penultimate round, we make our way to the state of Florida, and that's where we'll wrap up the championship with a double header. The first of the 2 rounds, it'll be round number 11 at the Sebring International Raceway for our final sprint of the season. It'll be brought to you live in terms of a post-round broadcast on Tuesday, the 11th of April 2023, with the Easter weekend. It does mean we have to shape up the schedule somewhat, and the racing action occurring on what will be Wednesday, the 5th of April. So it does mean there is going to be quite a time lapse, but we can assure you, ladies and gents, whilst there may be a lapse in terms of when the post-race broadcast occurs, it is not going to be one you want to miss, because everything is on the line. In the Pro Championship, Jason Landry could wrap it all up with a round to spare. In the Prime Championship, Alberto Alvarez needs to absolutely knock it out of the park if he wants to come back and fight Logan McKenzie in the season finale. And in the AM class, it's going to be practically dead even on the scores between Fernando Takahashi and Samuel Bernardi, and with 2 rounds to go, they're both going to be fired up, and Bernardi needs to strike back. We'll find out all about that and more next time, but until then, we've been the Middle of the Pack Racing League. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, have a fantastic rest of your weekend, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.